Thank you for tuning in to Belmont Journal. I'm your host, Maribel Carvajal de Salazar. Today we're in the studio and we're going to learn more about the three candidates for the Select Board seat. And today with us we have Alex Howard. Welcome.
Hi, glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Can you tell our viewers about yourself and your family?
Yeah, thanks, Maribel. So my name is Alex Howard. I am fairly new to Belmont, in the last couple of years here. But going back a little bit, so a little bit of my history, I grew up in southern Utah, actually, and a little southwest there. Went to school, joined the Marine Corps. After the Marine Corps, went back to grad school, which then led me to the Air Force Research Laboratory out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Spent about 15 years there, raised 2 children there. And had a great opportunity there to learn. It was part of scientific and engineering, contracting, procurements, all kinds of herding cats and taking disparate ideas and concepts towards really challenging goals. And so from there, moved to Boston. Had actually only been here once before I moved here, and so that was great. About 2018, and I've been here ever since. I have a 4.5-year-old son that I'm raising here in Belmont, a dog, 2 cats. I've been in the Marine Corps now for about coming up on 30 years, and so I'm in the reserves now, and that also working with a DoD contractor.
So that's the reason that you came to Belmont?
Yeah. So I came to Belmont here specifically when I was looking for areas. My boss, a gentleman I really admire, he lives here, and he had told me about it. And the schools are phenomenal, consistently ranked, top in the state. And knowing that I'm going to be raising a 4.5-year-old, my son here, my older 2 children are off now, college. But yeah, so that's brought me here to Belmont.
And what do you do for work?
So I'm a scientist, an engineer. I lead a team for advanced concept engineering for a DoD contractor. And then also, being in the Marine Corps, I still do the Marine Corps Reserves is the other part of that equation there.
Have you served in Belmont? Do you have any experience on our town?
So I've lived here, like I said, for a couple of years. And so why I actually wanted to run for the Select Board was looking at opportunities and bringing some of my skills and abilities that I believe could help. And so that's really kind of the impetus behind I've got to jump in here and see how I can contribute and bring that to bear.
And what experience do you think you can bring to this role?
Well, that's great. So, very good question. So I, in my different roles, both in government, the Air Force Research Laboratory, and the Marine Corps, I've led organizations, teams. By the time I was 30, I was leading 125 Marines as a company commander in operations around the globe. And, as you can imagine, early 2000s, and taking these ideas, and then also at the Air Force Research Lab, there's a lot of tough problems that we have to address in the space community, and so a lot of different ideas and how to really take these varying ideas and concepts from everybody and all these multiple voices, but then make a decision and how to get a coherent plan, a strategy to achieve what that end goal really is, and on a timeline that's relevant. And so taking that experience and bringing that to bear here, I think that's what I can really bring in, is bringing that leadership and understanding how to work with people and also keep the process moving. I found over the years, people really love to discuss problems, admire problems, but they want to get solutions done at the end of the day. And so sometimes it's hard to get that next step, to get traction, to get moving and have something done. And I feel like Belmont is on a great path, and I think that I can help and bring that to bear and provide some value add.
Yeah, if elected, what will be your top priorities?
So I think a reoccurring theme here is that I've seen obviously is the fiscal. We look historically. We now have on the ballot for more fiscal decisions to be made. But I think that's the primary thing that we have to make sure we are good. There's so many facets to that discussion too. Is it expenditures? Is it revenue? Well, the answer is both, right? And so I think that is the top thing that we have to make sure that we are addressing and paying attention to. I believe it's part of that, the zoning, looking at how we do our zoning here in Belmont. 4.7 miles here in Belmont. It's a relatively small town, but I feel like it's a strong impact, especially where we're located, proximity to Boston, the highways here, the interstates. But how we look at our zoning, how we look at how that interfaces with the community path. It's been going on for a couple of decades now. So I think that, and then also our infrastructure. I think we've seen that the stormwater and the sewer have been a persistent issue as we look at other issues. But I believe that our infrastructure, roads, everything factors into that as well. So those are really the top three that I would seek to pay attention to.
Since you mentioned the financial part, where do you stand on the override?
That's a tough one. That's a question that everybody's been asking. They find out I'm running for select board, and that's the first question. So I'm reluctantly in favor. I think that we're at a position now where we have to do something, and I think that is a solution to get there. We didn't get here overnight, and this is not the first time we've had to come asking for an override. But so I say reluctantly in favor, and that's why I want to make sure, if elected, that that's something we are paying attention to. And by saying that, it's not that the select board hasn't been, or the town of Belmont. No, that they absolutely have. And there's some really brilliant people that have been looking at this. And so I feel like that's something that we have to keep a disciplined approach to make sure that we're pragmatically thinking about these things to make sure that we're really serving now and in the future, setting Belmont up for success.
Correct. So where do you stand on the assessor question? Will be on the ballot for April 2nd. Should we elect or appoint?
So I did some research on this, and looking back, I feel like Belmont would be really served to have an appointed assessor. That allows the select board and the committees and the town to really have someone that is qualified, capable, someone that's empowered, somebody that has the authority and responsibility to get that work done. And elected could do the same, but I feel like appointed would just be that much more specific in how they can address and get that right person in there.
All right. How do you think Belmont can reduce its spending to prevent the need of future overrides?
I wish I had the magic answer to that one. That's a great question, but it's only part of it, right? I think that it's not just an expenditure issue, it's the revenue issue. And so how do we make sure that providing the critical services we need to as a town, fire, police, school, infrastructure, all these things are very important, critical. Senior services, right? We have these things, and what make Belmont so great. So we need to make sure those are kept, but how then do we increase our revenue to support the pragmatic and disciplined expansion of those services? Because as Belmont grows, the population's going to grow. We make progress towards the affordable housing goals that have been set that we still need to achieve. We're still far short of the 10%. So we need to make sure that we have the services and the infrastructure in place to support that, to support the growing number of people here that come to Belmont. So I feel like that's just part of it. So yeah, it's more of how do we make sure that we're paying attention to those services and that we're not letting them grow uncontrollable, but also then we are looking at how do we bring the revenue to support that growth in a healthy manner.
All right. How will you reach out to residents that are not yet engaged in the town affairs to foster more diversity, inclusivity, and participation?
It's a great question. One of the things I love about Belmont is I feel like everybody's involved, and of course, not everybody knows everything. That would be impossible. But I feel that everyone here is very knowledgeable about what's going on in our town, and so, I feel like I look forward to meeting everybody and more people. I feel like more people know my dog, Aries. You've seen him around Beaverbrook, seen him around Townfield, but I look forward to meeting more people and understanding how we can get as many people want to be involved as possible. But that seems like a low hurdle because a lot of people are very active in the community and have very constructive ideas. It's just, when I talk to you, it's like, oh, how about this? Great idea. And so I think great ideas come from everywhere. So it's something we should pay attention to.
Our town contains various long-standing needs amid limited resources. How do you propose maximizing our funds to address critical areas such as infrastructure maintenance, wastewater maintenance, management, and technology?
Great question. Going back to what we talked about previously, understanding that it's not just about expenditures but revenue, but also I feel like a great opportunity, and Belmont has been really great about this, looking at the budgets over the years, leveraging resources from state and federal organizations that are in place. What we can do locally is to make sure that we have a disciplined approach and we're using those funds appropriately and effectively in the most efficient way we can. And sometimes that might be adjusting the way we do business. And instead of perhaps looking at lowest bidder is the best approach. Maybe we look at a best value approach for our contracting and acquisitions. Looking at how we can use those other funds to leverage our funds to get the biggest bang for the buck. And so I feel like that's a critical part. It's always better to have outside monies to support our local efforts here. Of course, everybody complains about bumpy roads and other infrastructure pieces, but I think that's something we can address and we should address. And I think that there's mechanisms in place, and we have been successful, and let's continue to be successful with that.
If elected, you're going to have a 3-year term. You're going to work closely with Roy Epstein and Elizabeth Dion. How do you envision your work together?
So part of my experience working with the government for nearly 30 years, really a lifetime of service here, is working with different personalities, different experiences, and it's an opportunity, first of all, to learn from people that have been doing this position, but also dignity, respect, and trust are the cornerstones of a strong working relationship. And it's sometimes the most effective relationship is not one that you always agree, but one that you have dignity, they have the respect, so that we can have the discourse to make sure that we're coming to the best solution. If everyone's always agreeing, we're not going to get the best solutions. And I'm not saying that I'm counter or anything of the nature, but I feel like working with them would be great because they're very bright, intelligent, successful people, have been doing a great job as the select people here already. And I feel like that's a huge opportunity to learn.
What do you think are the most pressing problems the Select Board is facing right now, and how will you make it better?
Well, great question, Maribel. I believe that the most pressing problems have to do with the override. We hear about it daily. We see it in different news venues. So really, it's that fiscal responsibility that we need to address, and I think that is the primary thing that we need to come in, looking at how we make sure we provide the services for the town of Belmont, make sure how we grow them appropriately, make sure we bring in opportunities for businesses to come in, looking at the zoning opportunities here, how we can address leveraging great things that have been in the works for decades, like the community path, maybe leveraging that to provide multi-use areas, zoning that can allow for low, medium, high density areas that we can improve our affordable housing, addressing that 10% goal, but then also provide for access through the community path for people to look at safe places to run, bike, walk, what have you. But that's part of the infrastructure part of that. And before we can get there, we need to really have a solid basis of that fiscal stability, making sure that we're not coming back year after year for more overrides. Let's look at it and figure out how we get to a stable position and move forward in an effective, pragmatic way.
Thank you. Now you can address our viewers, and why should they vote for you on April 2nd?
So I'm coming in as an outside candidate that hasn't been in the town government or town politics. I feel that I have an outside voice, outside perspective. I can really bring that new look to how we are accomplishing different challenging goals that come at us here as the town of Belmont as we go forward. And bringing my experience in, I think that that's really what can help benefit the town of Belmont as we move forward.
Thank you, Alex. It was nice to get to know you. We wish you the best in your campaign. And remember, election is April 2nd. That was it for today. I'm your host, Maribel Carvajal de Salazar. See you next time.